70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city to finish the transgression and to make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. And unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation. And that determined shall be poured upon the desolate.
In the book Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackey, he provides meticulous descriptions of many of the influential figures of his time. Of these, one of most interesting description is that of Mr. Methuen, ambassador to the King of Portugal. He is said to be a man of intrigue, but very muddy in his complexion. In his complexion and manners, much of a Spaniard, a tall black man, 50 years old. Here the author gives us the general description of the man living in Spain, the one we call the Moors. In his own words, of his first account, they are tall men of black complexion. And this description of the Moors is not unique. As we saw, it shows up in paintings, it shows up in carvings, it also shows up in innumerable medieval texts. But the Africans were not the only Moors. Arabs made a good contingent of the Moor population, but the sheer number of black Africans as Moors caused the contemporary artists and writers to depict them as black with clearly identifiable black features. One of the most influential Moor factions was the Almoravids, a group that brought many inventions to Europe, including the horseshoe arch. Coming from present-day Mauritania and Mali when they were majority black, the Almoravids were depicted and almost universally described as black by their contemporaries. In the book Historia Compostelana, they are described as follows. Quote, after almost 3 years, the Almoravids, Moabite, whom the heat of the sun makes them similar to the Ethiopians, invaded the fortresses and dependent towns of Toledo and attacked with more force than usual. End quote. The book also goes on to state that, quote, before they ruled they had worn their veil, lidam, in the desert, only against the heat and cold as the Arabs do, and were mostly of dark, asmar complexion. End quote. And the Arabic word asmar describes a color that is as dark as coal. And their leader was described as brown skin with kinky hair. Yet another leader of the Almoravids, Abu Bakr ibn Umar, was depicted as shown, as you can see, unmistakably black. In 711 AD, when the Moors led their conquest of Spain, the whole of Europe was going through turmoil. 3 centuries before, the Roman Empire had collapsed. Europe was now divided between East and West, and soon the Vikings would begin their reign of terror. Malnutrition, illiteracy, disease, and lawlessness were rampant throughout most of the region. The arrival of the Moors forced the unification of rival factions under the banner of the Church. It also caused the rapid adaptation of European society to what they perceived as a new threat to their way of life. But as much as the Moors were perceived to be a threat, they brought a long list of civilizing elements to Europe. The Arabic numerals, algebra and trigonometry, medicine, agriculture, techniques, architecture and music, waterworks, navigation, papermaking. These are just a few of the elements that Europe inherited from the invaders that had come from the shores of northern Africa. Among these items, one can find the classic Greek text, These have been translated to Arabic by researchers from the Islamic Empire. Yes, the Greek texts we have today are in fact texts that were given back to Europe by the Africans. Once they arrived in Europe, these blacks started showing up in increasing frequency as royals and nobles all over Europe. And to some Europeans, they had an all too familiar look, that of their deity.
Paying your bills on time raises your credit score, right? Wrong. In fact, this is one of the
You know the feeling. Those moments when your life changes forever. If you lost or need to update your health insurance because of
Because of the consistent iconoclast efforts, it is difficult for most to realize the true presence of Africans as nobles in Europe. It is even more difficult to admit the role of Africans as venerated deities. But that was precisely the intended outcome of the iconoclast movement. Masquerading as an exercise to remove icons altogether, its real objective was to redefine them. And I argue that this movement never really ended. It went from the destruction of black icons as early as the 8th century AD to a new form where historians are knowingly hiding notable black presence in medieval Europe. And what they will instead focus on are exceptions that happen to reinforce the narrative that black people only had a role of servitude. There is no better example for this than the transformation of Queen Elizabeth I from her first-hand accounts to her repainted figures. In the Calendar of State Papers and Manuscripts Relating to English Affairs on page 1058, when Ambassador Giovanni Michel writes, quote, "Of this sister of hers, I must remind your serenity that after the repudiation of Queen Catherine, the present Queen's mother, she was born of Henry VIII, and of his second wife, Anne Boleyn, an Englishwoman and of noble birth, although 2 years afterwards she was beheaded for adultery. My Lady Elizabeth was born in September 1533, so she is now 23 years old. She is a young woman whose mind is considered no less excellent than her person, although her face is comely rather than handsome, but she is tall and well-formed, with a good skin, although swarthy." End quote. And if you wondered what swarthy means in Old English, it means of dark complexion or black. And yet when we look at portraits and paintings for Elizabeth, she is depicted with the whitest of white skins, with what happens to be curly red hair. Take a note of this, as it will come to be of importance as we progress. In yet another account of Elizabeth in the book English and Scottish History, she is described by Sir James Melvin as follows, quote, "Her hair was more reddish than yellow, curled in appearance naturally. She desired to know of me what color of hair was reputed best, and whether my queen's hair or hers were best, and which of them two was the fairest." End quote. Well, it is not uncommon at all for black women to be born with curly red hair. As you can see in these many examples, swarthy, of dark complexion with curly red hair, and again swarthy dark complexion with curly red hair. And if you are still doubting that iconoclasm erased as many images of black nobility as they could find, here is yet another example. In the book Queen Elizabeth by Alison Weir, Sir Francis Walsingham is spoken of by the Queen as follows. Quote, "Walsingham was nearing 40. He had been educated at Cambridge, Gray's Inn, and Padua, and become an MP. Later, he had come under the patronage of Cecil, who had offered him a post at court, and later placed him in charge of his secret agents. Because of his swarthy complexion and black clothes, Elizabeth nicknamed Walsingham her Moor." End quote. As we have just seen, Sir Francis Walsingham was a Moor and was swarthy of complexion, but if you search for his images, this is what you get. Someone who is the farthest away from swarthy. It wasn't just England. The Black Moors were everywhere in Europe, and they showed up in very surprising areas. In the 10th century in Scotland, the king was called Dub Mac Mael Coluim. This is beyond interesting because the old Scottish meaning of dub is black, as you can see from this old dictionary, and in old Wikipedia depictions of the man he was shown as follows. But this has since been replaced. If you read on, you'll see that he was called the Black. Further to this, in the book The Mystery of Legends of Scotland, the author confirms the existence of purely black people. We see one of them in the person of Kenneth the Niger. During the 10th century, Kenneth the Niger ruled over 3 provinces in Scotland. The archaeologist and writer David McRitchie declared that the Moors dominated Scotland as late as the time of the Saxon kings. So late as the 10th century, 3 of the provinces of Scotland were wholly black, and the supreme ruler of these were the Black Kings of Scotland. You will also note that Scottish royalty was intimately related with English royalty through various bloodlines. On the European continent, we continue to find influential black figures throughout the Middle Ages. In 16th century Italy, we find the medallion depicting an unidentified European king. In 12th century Italy, Moorish philosopher Ibn Rushd, here depicted. And the Black Moors didn't just become kings and queens in Europe, they also show up as rulers of the Byzantine Empire in multiple instances. Like Nikephoros II Phocas, Emperor of Byzantium from 912 to 969, he is described in the Relatio of Luitprand of Cremona as, quote, very bristly through the length and thickness of his hair, in color an Ethiopian, one whom it would not be pleasant to meet in the middle of the night, end quote. And yet this is his depiction, really nothing like the man. Here again we see the iconoclast at work, but where they changed some icons, they could not get all the references.
Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh Shai, Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh Shai, Barakati Yahweh, Barakati Yahweh Shai, Barakati Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Ba Racha HaKodash, Kal Thapa Arath, Hawad Wahaloyam La, Allah Hayanawa, Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Ba Racha HaKodash. And what I just said in the Lashon Kodash, the Lashon Kodash being the ancient Paleo-Hebrew, or in other words, the true biblical Hebrew, for holy tongue or language. And what I just said is, all glory, honor, and praises abundantly and continuously to our power, Yahweh, the true name of the Heavenly Father, who the world ignorantly and incorrectly calls God, in the name of his only begotten Son, our Savior, our Messiah, our Deliverer, Yahweh Shai, HaMashiach, who the world ignorantly and incorrectly calls Jesus Christ, in, or in other words, through the Holy Spirit. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and respect to the brothers teaching and pushing this truth out the four corners of the earth, to the hopeful elect, the 144,000 and the 1/3, as well as the rest of the elect, scattered abroad amongst the heathen nations to the four corners of the earth, east, north, south, and west. To you I say, Shalom. This is your brother Ayib Tazadakwa coming back at you again, all through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shah, with another lesson. Yahweh Ratazah is going to be edifying and encouraging for you Akim and any Akwaf that may be listening and or watching. All right, now this is a continuation. The previous part, this is part 2, and like I said, this is a continuation. The previous part is not up yet, because normally I would show it right now so that anybody who wants to go and check out part 1 who has not already seen that could do so. But I have not yet taken that part live quite yet. So by the time that this one is live, it should be up already. So you can just look for the preceding video, the preceding lesson, and it should be the one right before this one. Okay. But this is a continuation. And I also want to say that fair use is allowed under U.S. law. So, I want to go ahead and give the fair use disclaimer. Fair use is allowed under U.S. law for educational, criticism, and commentary purposes and the such, And that's, of course, what we're going to be doing tonight. I'm not profiting from this at all in any way, shape, fashion, or form. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give credit to the originator of this material right now. You see the title there, Elizabeth suppressed primary accounts of black, quote unquote black, okay, so-called black nobility in Europe. Okay, and you go down and you see the page is without history. So credit has been given to the originator of the material. Okay, and I may or may not remember to put the link in the description, but if I don't, you can look the video up. You got the title and you have the name of the page, and you can look it up. It is a good watch. when you watch it in its entirety, ultimately they get to the point where they bring out that the Israelites are so-called blacks. They bring that out. Okay. They don't really, of course, make the connection with them also being so-called Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians. However, by merely bringing out that they're the so-called blacks, that covers the so-called Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians. Because if you go back to before the time of the split, you go back before the death of King Solomon, when all 12 tribes were together, all 12 tribes looked like so-called blacks. It's just that the Northern Kingdom, after the death of King Solomon, there was a split that took place, and the Northern Kingdom went into their idolatry very, very hard, hundreds of years earlier than the Southern Kingdom did. They were cut off by the Heavenly Father hundreds of years earlier than the Heavenly Father. They were cut off by the Heavenly Father hundreds of years earlier than the Southern Kingdom was, and they mixed and intermingled genetically with the heathen nations a lot harder and a lot earlier than the Southern Kingdom ever did. So not only did they get a hundreds of years head start on mixing and intermingling genetically with the heathen nations, but they also did it a lot harder. Ultimately, the Southern Kingdom was also cut off, and the Southern Kingdom also mixed and intermingled, went into its idolatry and mixed and intermingled with the heathen nations as well, but not to the extent as not nearly to the extent that the Northern Kingdom did. So that's the reason why there's such a greater genetic diversity between what the Northern Kingdom looks like and the Southern Kingdom look like. But what a lot of people don't recognize or realize, nor is it often discussed or pointed out, is that if you get amongst the so-called Latinos and Hispanics, and also same thing would be true, so-called Native Americans and Seminole Indians, right? What you find is that a lot more of them than you would think look like so-called blacks. Okay. And that's because that is the original way that they looked. Okay. So, and there are a lot of them that look like that, but it's a lot of them that don't. Okay. So that's the reason why there's so much genetic diversity. But the so-called black nobility in Europe was the Southern Kingdom. Okay. The Northern Kingdom was already over here in the Americas during this time. Okay. But that was the Southern Kingdom, the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi predominantly. Right. And you have ancient maps that will support that as well. You get yourself an old map of Africa, and right in the center of it, it'll say Kingdom of, I believe it spelled it as Ouida, Ouida, right? But it is no difficult task to show that is just a variation of Judah. Okay, so with a little bit of work, and it's not hard at all. It's relatively quick and easy to show that that's just an alternative spelling of Judah, alternative spelling and pronunciation of Judah. Okay, because who it was there in the kingdom of Ouida, or Judah, is really what it's talking about. The kingdom of Judah was the tribe of Judah predominantly. And you're going to have some of the other tribes mixed in there with them, but predominantly it was the tribes of Judah, because as we already brought out in the previous lesson, and that's the reason why I read Daniel 9, 24, 5, 6, and 7, and we're going to touch on that tonight. That's the focus of tonight's lesson. All right. The Israelites, okay, he called us Africans, right? That's why we're going to be touching on that. We're not Africans, okay? The true Africans are descendants of Ham. We're actually descendants of Shem, Noah's 3 sons. Ham in the Hebrew, Shem in the English, right? But it's actually Shem, S-H-A-M, and then Japheth, right? And I don't remember or know how to say Japheth in the Hebrew, right? So, but you got his 3 sons. We'll stick with the English for now. You got Ham, Shem, and Japheth, right? The true Africans go back to Ham. You got like Libya, Put, Egypt, Ethiopia. Let me see here. I think that's predominantly them. I might be missing one. Those are the descendants of Ham. Okay. And then you have the descendants of Shem, which there's a number of nations that come out of Shem as well. And we actually go back through Shem. Okay. And I'm not going to get all into it. You can check Genesis, the 10th chapter. You can go to Genesis. I believe it also continues in Genesis, the 11th chapter, with the chosen line, the chosen lineage, which of course ultimately leads down to Abraham and and then Isaac and then Jacob. And then you also have two nations, Ammon and Moab, coming out of Lot. And that's in Genesis, the 19th chapter. And you have Jacob and Esau, the two most important nations, coming on the scene in Genesis, the 25th chapter, right? Okay. So, but we go back to Shem. We are the Hebrew Israelites, right? But there is a similarity between the way that we look. All right. It's not exactly the same. It's not exactly the same. If you know what you're looking, if you minimize the genetic mixing between us and the Hamitic nations, right? And you know what you're looking for, you can spot differences. Okay, and you'll be able to say, no. It looks kind of like an Israelite, but that's actually a Hamite. Okay. Or no. That looks kind of like a Hamite, but that's actually an Israelite. Okay, because there are differences and there's similarities between the way we look and how they look, but there are differences, right? Okay. However, the differences are subtle and minimal enough that, you know, if you're not paying attention, or if you don't know what you're looking at, or if you just don't even know that there's a difference between, you know, as the saying goes, not all skin folk are kinfolk. If you just don't even know there's a difference at all, you don't understand what nations are and bloodlines and all that, then you will easily mistake an Israelite for a Hamite and vice versa, or just think that they're all just one same people. Especially with us having fled from Roman persecution in 70 AD, you know, 66 to 73, as we're going to get into with Daniel's 70th week. But having fled Roman persecution in accordance with the commands of Yahushua, which we're going to get in Matthew 24, and then fleeing down into the interiors of Africa, right, the kingdom of Weda or Judah, and then a lot of us migrating over into the west coast of Africa, well, we're living right down there in the land of Ham as refugees, right? We're not from that land. We're not the same people as the people that are in that land, but we're living there, and we look like them and they look like us, close enough, similar enough, so people think that we're Africans, right? But the people who rounded us up off of the west coast of Africa, they knew that they were not rounding up Africans. Matter of fact, they co-opted the true Africans to help them round us up, which the true Africans, again, descendants of Ham, they were more than happy enough to help do that, because they didn't really like us being on their land anyway, and we kept pretty much separate from them. Yeah, we would take their women as concubines, but I don't know if we gave. Hopefully, we weren't giving them our women as concubines, because we ain't really, we ain't really supposed to be. The daughters of Zion are for us, man. Okay, they're the top women on the planet, and they're for us. Now we can rock with the heathen women. Okay, for anybody getting emotional about that, then you don't understand the scriptures. You need to read the scriptures. All right, but anyway, we kept separate from them. We would rock with some of their women. We would deal with their women as concubines, which are wives through bondage or lesser wives, right? But we wouldn't mix it. We wouldn't marry with them, which that's the way we're supposed to do it. We're not supposed to make marriages with the heathen. There's a difference between a marriage and taking a wife through bondage. You can have a wife through bondage, but not marry. In other words, join households. That's what marriage is. Marriage means to join. There's a marriage of these two companies. They joined, right? So we weren't supposed to be marrying these heathen women and joining households with their fathers. That we weren't to do, right? So we kept separate. So there was always, here we are in their land, and in their land for hundreds of years, and over 1,000 years we're in their land, and we're never really getting down with them or rocking with them like that. So they were more than happy to help get rid of us and round us up and sell us and profit off of it. Right? So we're going to touch on all that. Okay. Elizabeth suppressed primary accounts of quote unquote so-called black nobility in Europe, which was the Israelites. That's the reason why they call it the Dark Ages. Okay. That's not just a coincidence. It's called the Dark Ages because dark-skinned, melanated people, namely the Israelites, okay, were in rulership during that time. And that's the reason why we're going to touch on the devil. I meant to touch on this last night, but everything's subject to the spirit, because the devil, Okay, we touched on this last night. Check out yesterday's lesson if you don't understand this. But I showed and proved with the breaking down the words in the Greek, showing you the words in the Greek, that devil and Hashatan, Satan, that does not always mean a spiritual being. Sometimes it's talking about a flesh and blood man. And we got this in part 1. So check out part 1 if you need more edification on this, right? But it means, when you look up the word for devil, diabolos in the Greek, it means a false accuser, slanderer, calumniator, right? And it also tells you that it's talking about, it can be referring to a flesh and blood man, which was the case last night when we got Revelation 20, which I'm going to show you here in a brief moment. Okay, just to touch on it, recap real quick before we move on with the new material, right? But that's what he did, man. He slanders us, right? Instead of this man presenting us as who we truly are, the true biblical Israelites, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and as the royal people that we truly are, the nobility of Egypt, I meant to say Europe, so-called Europe. It's actually Asia Minor and Western Asia, right? Instead of him presenting, just saying, yeah, you know, we got these people in captivity and all that, and they're at the bottom right now, but they used to be on top, you know, they used to be, you know, the nobles and all these accomplishments and things that, you know, we now take for granted. A lot of it goes back to them, if not all of it. You know, no, he hides and covers over all that history, which is coming out. This is just one example of many, many, many examples of how this information is coming out, right? And you notice that it said Moors from, I think it said Egypt to Russia, right? Russia, hey, because we were all up in those lands. I think I can't remember if it's Egypt or Ethiopia or whatever it said, but I want to highlight on the Russia because we were up in Russia as well. And Putin just recently opened up his oldest vault, which I think he already had opened it up, but he just wasn't saying anything because he was hoping to, you know, get along with his brethren. So he ain't want to say anything. But once he finally saw that there wasn't going to be any getting along with his brethren, you know, because of how they're behaving with this Ukraine war, he was like, well, I'm just going to go ahead and let the cat out the bag. And he opened up the oldest vault that they have over there, which predates the Renaissance. So this goes back during, this vault goes back to before the Renaissance, during medieval times, the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, as they referred to it there. They also called it the Byzantine Empire, which Byzantine, if I understand, means backwards. And what was backwards about it is that from the perspective of the Edomites, they were on the bottom, and we were, the Israelites, dark-skinned melanated people, were on top. That's why they called it the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. And supposedly, I still remember being taught this in school, well, nothing happened during that time. There was very little that happened. Or whatever did happen, we lost the records and we don't have it. Come to find out, that's all a crock of shit. Okay, it is, right? So there's all kinds of things that was going on. Did that ever make any sense? Because that's what I was told in school, but nothing really much happened during that time. Did that make any sense? For 1,000 years, nothing's really happening? Come on, man. Right? And there's all kinds of things that was going on during that time, and the information is out. The information is here. We do have the records, right? But the reason why they were trying to hide it is because it's us who was in power, and they were on the bottom. Matter of fact, they were driven up to the Caucasus Mountains, okay? Which is what we got last night. Okay, I know I'm just touching on a lot of things, but I'm just speaking as the Spirit gives me utterance, man. All right, but let me just try to get on, because we're almost a half hour in and I haven't even gotten to the new stuff. So let me touch on that Revelation 20. All right, just briefly, because if you really want to get it, you got to check out part 1. Okay. All right, so Revelation 20. Okay. Iconoclasm. He mentioned that a lot in that video, right? Which means the defacing of the images, because he mentioned that the whole point of iconoclasm was not to destroy the images, but to reinvent them, I think was the word he used. To reimagine them. I think he might have used that word. Right. In other words, they didn't want to get rid of the icons. There's so many icons, you can't get rid of them anyway. The paintings, the images, the sculptures, the whatnot. You can't get rid of all those. But what did they want to do? Well, they'll get rid of some of them. But what did they really wanted to do is they wanted to either deface them to make it look like it was them. That's the reason why you see sculptures, when it comes to sculptures, you see a lot of noses chipped off, because the nose is a dead giveaway that it's not them. because our nose have a flatter, rounder shape. Their nose have a narrower, pointier shape. So they would knock the nose off, and that's the reason why, right? So they wanted to deface the image but not destroy it, so that it would pass as being them. Whether they whitewashed the painting or whether they took the real one, an authentic one, and locked it up somewhere. Like they have a lot of stuff, man. Who knows what they have buried under the Vatican, right? But it's not just there. They have a lot of other things that are buried and hidden, tucked away. But then they commissioned Leonardo da Vinci and some of these other famous artists to make representations of them. But everything would be exactly the same. But instead of showing a so-called black man or a so-called black woman, the Israelites, the sons of God and the daughters of Zion, it would show an Edomite, like they showed you in the picture there, right? So they would have the exact painting done again, but it would show them instead of us, right? Okay. And I saw an angel. I'm going to try and make this quick because we covered this from yesterday. Come down from heaven. So I'm just going to tell you what it means. I'm not going to really break it down like I did last night. Having the key of the bottomless pit, that's Europe, and a great chain in his hand. That chain is spiritual. It's not literal. It's a spiritual chain. Okay. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, going back to Genesis 3:1. Check out part 1. I'm just going to give you the breakdown, but I'm not going to go all into detail. I'm just going to tell you what it means. Okay. I went all into detail in it last night. You don't understand it, go get part 1. Okay. That old serpent, which is the devil, the old serpent, going back to Genesis 3:1, which was a flesh and blood man, because Adam and Eve were not the only two people on the planet. Broken down in part 1. Go get part 1 if you don't understand that. Okay. So that serpent was a flesh and blood man, which actually was Cain before he was Cain. Okay. And then so that's flesh and blood man came back in the reincarnation as Cain, and Cain came back in the reincarnation as Esau, which was the progenitor of the Edomites. Okay, that's all explained in part 1. Go check it out. Which is the devil. We broke down that word. We got it in part 1, and Satan got it in part 1, showing you that both times it can be referring to a flesh and blood man, which is the case here. Okay, the descendants of Esau, and bound him 1,000 years. That 1,000 years is what is known today as the medieval ages. Okay, the Byzantine Empire, the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. Okay, all talking about that same 1,000-year period of time, which is not an exact, like one day it wasn't started, then the next day it was. No, there was a transition, okay, of about 300 AD to 450 AD. That's when it was transitioning, and then it transitioned out of it at about 1300 AD to about 1450 AD. So, about 1,000 years. Okay, and that's what's known as the Byzantine Empire, the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, the Medieval Empire, right? And cast him into the bottomless pit. We got that already. Let's move. No, we didn't get there yet, right? And bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, which is Europe, and shut him up. So in other words, there was nothing he could do to get out of that state, that condition he was in, and set a seal upon him, again spiritually, that he should deceive the nations no more, because that's what this man does. Right, and that's what he was doing at that time. Anytime he's doing anything, that's what he's doing. When he's you're of your father the devil, for he was a murderer from the beginning. And when he speaketh the lie, he speaketh his own. For there is no truth in him. He is a liar and the father of lies. That's John 8:44. Okay, so whenever this man is out left to his own devices to do what he do, he is deceiving, because that's his nature. He can't not deceive. When he speaketh the lie, he speaketh his own. He's the father of lies. Going back to the serpent in the garden, and then ultimately with Cain. Okay, where's your brother? Am I my brother's keeper? Hey, he's the father of lies. Lies originated with this man. Okay, let's keep going. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. That's called the Renaissance. That's that period of time from 1300 AD. These are approximate dates. 1450 AD. That's when they started coming down, and that's the period of time known as the Renaissance. And the period of time known as the Renaissance went on for a couple of hundred years. And there was a lot of things that was coming out. They was putting out all this art. There was a lot of deception that was going out. And a part of that deception. Part of that deception was the iconoclasm, defacing the images, and also ultimately presenting us as Africans. okay, hiding who we truly are, the true Israelites, and the people who were ruling Western Asia, Asia Minor, for that 1,000-year period, hiding that we were that we were nobility, that we were regal, that we were royal from an earthly perspective. Well, if they're going to do that, then of course they might as well also hide that we're regal from a heavenly perspective, because we're the sons of God and the daughters of Zion. We're the true Israelites. And they know both of those things, but they hid it, right? And they ultimately presented us as Africans, as so-called blacks, so-called African Americans, so-called Negroes and whatnot. And then when it comes to the Northern Kingdom, they didn't stop at the Southern Kingdom. They went to the Northern Kingdom too. Latinos, Hispanics, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Mexicans, all these other so-called Latino Hispanic bywords and proverbs. And then with the and they had the nerve to call the tribes of Gad and Reuben the red man. When they're the red man, going back to because the tribes of Gad and Reuben, they're brown skinned, just like all the Israelites, different shades of brown. But they call him the red man because he's ready. And a lot of us are ready, even in the Southern Kingdom as well, right? But he called him the red man when here, according to the scriptures in Genesis 25 and 25, he's the red man. And when you look at him, he literally is red. Okay, because he doesn't have any melanin in his skin, and his blood shows forth through his skin. But here he is, being the slanderer, being the devil, the false accuser that he is. He calls us, okay, not my tribe, because I'm the tribe of Levi, right, Southern Kingdom, but he calls us, right, meaning the Israelites, tribes of Gad and Reuben. He calls us the red man. Yeah, he's us, and we're him. That's what he's saying, right? Okay, so that's what he does, man. He deceives like that and casts him into the bottomless pit. Let's move on. So when you get down here to the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. So he had to be let out, and he came out with all that and a lot of other lies too, like pagan Christianity, pushing that at the edge of the sword, convert to Christianity or burn in hell, which is another false doctrine. Okay, convert to Christianity or feel the cold edge of my sword as I run you through. The Crusades, man, convert to Christianity or die, right? Okay. In all manner of wickedness and abomination, this man is pushed. All lies, all deception, all deceit. That's what he do. But when he was shut up, he couldn't do that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. What's he going to do when he gets loose? Well, drop down. I already explained in part 1 that verses 4, 5, and 6 are like an insert. Okay. This is chronological. Verses 1, 2, and 3 are chronological, and then it jumps forward in the future, okay, to after the destruction and after the deliverance and salvation. This is now in the kingdom of heaven. Verses 4, 5, and 6 is the kingdom of heaven, and then it jumps back to where it left off in verse 3 and picks up again back where it left off in verse 3. So if you want to read it chronologically, you would read verses 1, 2, and 3. Skip 4, 5, and 6, read 7, 8, 9, all the way down to the end of the chapter, and then come back and read 4, 5, and 6. That's chronological. And the Heavenly Father threw that in there that way on purpose to throw off everybody that he doesn't want to understand the scriptures. They read it chronologically, and it doesn't make any sense. And then they see, well, there's a 1,000-year period in verse 3, and there's a 1,000-year period in verse 4, and there's a 1,000-year period in verse 6, and there's a 1,000-year period in verse 7, and they're all the same 1,000-year period. Wrong. See, they're never going to get it. Okay, like in Vogue, never going to get it, never going to get it. Okay, and so I just gave you the breakdown there on how to understand this from a time perspective. Let's pick up at verse 7, because verse 3, it jumps to verse 7 if you want to be chronological with it. And when the 1,000 years, it's talking about this 1,000 years up here in verse 3, where they were shut up and then loosed and then let out for a little season. And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan, Hashatan, Satan, just say Shaitan, which means adversary. This is not talking about the spiritual demon Satan. This is talking about the biblical Edomites. Shall be loosed out of his prison. His prison was the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, that's the Caucasus Mountains are located in Georgia, the nation or the state of Georgia. All right, located over there in the bottomless pit, which today they call Europe, but it's Western Asia. And what's he going to do when he gets out? He's going to do what he always do. And shall go out to deceive the nations. And part of that deception includes the lie of, or part of that deception is hiding who we are, hiding what we have been doing during that 1,000-year period, and misrepresenting us as so-called blacks, Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, Seminole Indians. Also, and not only does he hide who we are and that we're regal and royal and all that, but this man destroys us. And then when we're in our worst state, now he destroys us, but when he destroys us, the destruction isn't bad enough. So he intentionally, pumps wickedness, wicked devices into our neighborhoods. And then when we trip on that as a people and fall on that and stumble on that as a people, then he puts that on blast through television, through literature, through magazines, through books, and a big way is movies and music. He puts that on blast in front of the whole world and say, see, look how awful these people are. Look at all the debauchery. Look at all the filth. Look at these people. And he present. Not only does he hide who we are and our royalty and our regalness, but he puts on blast and presents us in our worst condition as being something that we're really truly not. Now we become that, but that's really not who we are. See, that's what it means to be the devil. We're going to get that in Revelation, the 12th chapter. Okay. And shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, which is talking about the land of modern day Russia, the land of the Medes. Okay. Gog, the land of Magog. Okay. All right. The people of Gog and the people of the land of Gog is just one place. It's not two different places. To gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea, which is in progress right now. Okay, they're being gathered together to battle right now. It's called World War III, Revelation 9 and 12, Revelation 11 and 14. So we got all that yesterday. Let's get into the new material, which is touching on him presenting us as so-called Africans, which is a lie that persists to this day. So-called blacks, Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, Seminole Indians. Okay, so-called African Americans with the Africans with the Southern Kingdom. Okay, because we're not Africans. We had fled from Roman persecution in 70 A.D. Okay, and we were refugees in the land of Africa, which Africa is not even the name of that land. Okay, that America is not known as the America. It was called the fourth part of the earth. It was called the uttermost part of the earth. Okay, and then it was not called the Americas until Edomite by the name of Amerigo Vespucci conquered the land. Or I don't know if he actually conquered it, but I don't know if he actually conquered, but it's named after an Edomite by the name of Amerigo Vespucci. Okay, and then that's where you get Amerigo. From that comes America, and you got North, Central, and South America. That's when it began to be called the Americas. Before that, it wasn't called the Americas. It was named the Americas after an Edomite. Okay, and same thing with Asia. Okay, his name was Scipio Asiaticus, and that's where you get the name of the continent Asia from. And then for Africa, it was Scipio Africanus, and that's where you get the name for Africa from. Okay, because that's what the Edomites do. They conquer a land and they name it after themselves. That's in the scriptures. Okay, and the first occurrence of that, okay, because it's in their spirit to do that, but the first occurrence of that is in Genesis 4 and 17. The Heavenly Father has put it in their spirit. All nations have a certain spirit about them, and it's going to be different from nation to nation to nation. Okay, and these are some of the things that's in the spirit of the Edomites. I've already gave you two of the earmarks of the Edomites. Okay, they are deceptive by nature. They can't not be deceptive. Even when you think they're being honest, they're not. Right? It's just who they are. Can a serpent not be a serpent? Can a serpent become an eagle and soar through the sky? No. Okay? They are deceptive by nature, right? But it's also in their nature to build a certain way, which you can look up Petra, Mount Seir, Petra, and you can compare that to the architecture of Greece. You can compare that to the architecture of Rome. I'm talking about ancient Greece and ancient Rome. You can compare that to the architecture of Washington, D.C. You can compare that to the architecture, the style of building and carving and all that of all the state capitals here in America, Babylon the Great. And you can compare that to the style of architecture of all the governmental buildings wherever so-called white people were at today, as long as they built them themselves. And what you're going to find is all of that matches because it's all the same people. Okay, and this is an indisputable fact. Anybody who would want to oppose this is going to run away quickly because they're embarrassed, because they can't oppose it. It's that obvious. All right. And Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch. Okay, this is not the same Enoch that walked with the Most High. This is a different Enoch. And he builded a city and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. It is in their spirit to do that. And it says this again in the book of Psalms as well. But let's move on. That was just a side point. What was I getting ready to show you? I'm going to show you over here in Matthew 24. This is iconoclasm exposed, man. Iconoclasm, the defacing of the images. This is the devil being the devil. This is the devil doing what the devil do, right? So Yahushua said this. When ye therefore shall see this is Matthew 24, extremely heavy prophetic chapter. Okay, Luke 21 and Mark 13 are the parallel chapters. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, because hey, there's a bunch of different abominations, man. This one here is an abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet. That's the opening passage. We're going to go there next. Stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains, and you better make haste. That's what he's saying in verses 17 and 18 and 19. And you better do it quick, okay? Because in accordance with the curses of Deuteronomy 28, Jerusalem is getting ready to be sacked. And so when you see it, you know that it's that time. Make sure that you don't go back, don't grab nothing. Just make haste and get the hell out of Dodge. That's what Yahushua is saying. And those that didn't hearken, they got caught up in the siege. And, very, very few survived. Very few survived. Okay, whether they were starved out or whether they were put to death by the sword, or whether they were taken as slaves and some killed in the Colosseum, some fed the lions, whatever. Okay, had to be gladiators and fight to the death, whatever it was. Very, very few of them made it out alive. Okay, but those that hearken into the words of Yahushua, they fled into the mountains. Some fled up into, Asia. Some fled up into Western Asia, Asia Minor, and Eastern Asia, and other places. But a lot of the ones that made it out, they listened and hearkened to the words of Yahushua, and they fled into the mountains and down into the interiors of Africa, again being refugees in the land of Ham, Chum, the land that would later be known as the land of Africa. Okay, again, the kingdom of Judah. Okay, you get yourself an old enough map, it's right there, man. You can't, boom, what the hell is that? Kingdom of Judah, that's Judah? Kingdom of Judah? What are the Judites doing that? Well, yeah, we fled Roman persecution in 70 AD, and we settled there. Okay, and then we kind of migrated over to us. Not there's a lot of us stayed there, but some of us started to migrate. We migrated from there. We didn't just stay there. Some of us migrated over to the West Coast, and other parts of Africa as well. And that's who was rounded up off the west coast of Africa and brought over to the Americas in cargo slave ships in the transatlantic slave trade, man. Come on, please. I hear you, scoffer. Just go ahead and say it. I know you want to say it. I'm talking to the scoffer now. I know you want to say it. It fits and it makes sense. Yes, it does. You can admit it, scoffer, okay? Because it's the truth, okay? Then let them be in Judea flee into the mountains, right? Okay? So we're not Africans, man. The true Africans don't like us, and we don't really like them either. Okay, that's a lot of our fiercest fighting, the Philistines and all that, Canaanites. That was with true Africans. Okay, they're some of our worst enemies. They're not our worst enemy, but they're some of our worst enemies. We just had to flee into their land because our top chief enemy, our actual worst enemy, was on our ass, and he was about to get the victory because it was prophecy. So we couldn't do anything about it. Yahushua said, flee. All who didn't flee, they put up a little bit of a fight, got a victory here or there, but ultimately it was all for naught, and they got decimated. It is the abomination of desolation, after all, right? Okay? So we fled from our top chief enemy down into the land of, maybe our second or third worst enemy. and we were just chilling there for a while. But again, he's our second or third worst enemy. So when the top chief enemy, along with one of our other enemies, showed up and wanted to round us up, they were more than happy to work with them. Okay, the three amigos, when it comes to rounding up the Israelites, okay, and performing that great offense, woe be unto the world because of offenses, for offenses must come. It had to happen, but woe unto him by whom the offense comes, right? You don't want it to be you, though, okay? And those three that are going to have a hell of a price tag to pay are, of course, the Edomites. They're the ringleader. And then you got the Ishmaelites, okay? And the Edomites and the Ishmaelites are our top two closest relatives, man. You know, all nations go back to Adam, right? So all nations are related, right? But of the nations here on the earth, the Edomites are our closest relative because they're our evil, wicked twin brother. But then you got the Ishmaelites. The Ishmaelites are the older brother of our forefather Isaac. So they're closely related to us as well. So you got really the top two nations that's the closest related to us. I mean, maybe you can throw in the Ammonites and the Moabites, which would be the modern day Japanese and the modern day Chinese. Maybe you can throw them in there because they come out a lot, right? So maybe you know, maybe they would kind of cut in on Ishmael, you know, because yeah, you know, it depends on how you look at it. But all of those are closely related to us as far as nations are concerned. So you got them, and then you got Ham over there, all working to bring us down, right? So, but the point is, we're not Africans, man. Okay, the Africans, the true Africans, are one of our top enemies. And they were working with other of our top enemies, including our top enemy, to bring us down. We were refugees, man, in Africa. So now let's go over to this Daniel, and let's break that down briefly. I'm not going to go into great detail, but I'm going to break it down in enough detail so that the understanding is there, because it ties directly to what Yahushua just said over in Matthew 24:15-16. Okay, 70 weeks. Now you can get the precepts and all that to show in the scriptures that sometimes when you see a week, it's talking about, or days rather, are referring to a single year. You can get precepts to show that a day sometimes refers to, metaphorically, a single year, okay, or a single year, a day. And so when it says 70 weeks are determined, and most of the so-called scholars, you know, recognize this. So there's not really a lot of debate here, okay? 70 weeks is 70 periods of 7 years, totaling 490 years, are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city, okay, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, city of peace, to finish the transgression and to make an end of his sins, and to make reconciliation for iniquity, and to bring in everlasting righteousness, and to seal up the vision and prophecy, seal it up, and to anoint the most holy, okay? Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, which most would say, and I would agree, is about 444, maybe 444 or 445 BC, okay? Unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, comma, and 62 weeks. Okay, so you got 7 weeks, 7 times 7, 49 years, and 62 weeks. Okay, 3 score is 20, 3 score is 60, and 2 weeks, 62 weeks. Right, 62, and you have what? 7. That gives you 69. That's 483 years. Yeah, 483 years, right? But it breaks it up into 42. It breaks it up into 42 and what's the 60 and 2? What's that? 400 and like you can do the math, right? 430, something like that. But when you add it all together, it gives you 483 years. Okay, 69 weeks. Which leaves what? 1 week remaining, because remember, it's set up here 70 weeks, right? So you add the 7 plus the 62, that gives you 69. You're missing one, right? You got one more you still need to get, right? But the other thing is, well, why does it break it up into 7 weeks and then 62 weeks? Okay, the 7 weeks and the 62 weeks, they're all sequential. There's no break there. It's all sequential. So why break it up into 7 weeks and 2 weeks? Well, 7 weeks, 49 years. Well, that's how long it takes to rebuild the temple, rebuild the city, rebuild the wall, and get that all done. Okay, right? And then it just rolls right into the 2 weeks. Okay, so that's the reason why it has a break. Even though it's all together, it breaks out the 7 from the 69 and gives you 7 and 62. 7 plus 62 gives you 69. It's all sequential, but that's the reason why it breaks it out, because that's the time when everything's being rebuilt. Okay, starting with the temple, going to the wall and the city and all that. 7 weeks, that's when that's being done. And then it rolls immediately into the 2 weeks, which is the 62 weeks, which you put all that together, you get the 483 years, which takes you right up into 32 to 33 AD. So you got from about 444 BC, 444, 445, I should say it counts down, right? 445, 444 BC, going to about 32, 33 AD. And when you add all that up together, you get, it's supposed to be 483 years. But when you add all that up together, you actually come up with like 477 years or something like that. So you're like, well, wait a minute, you're like 6 years short or something like that, right? Well, that's because you got to understand that the way we count years today, if you look it up, you'll find out that there's a such thing as years, which is what you would think of when somebody says there's a year, 365 days in a year, right? Okay. And then you have prophetic years. But what you find out is that prophetic years are shorter than what we refer to as years today. Okay. And you might ask the question is, well, why? Because when you look at the prophetic years, it's actually 483. Even though when you do it the way we do it now, it comes up to be like 477, where it's supposed to be 483. When you use prophetic years instead, it actually comes up to the 483. And you might say, well, what's the deal with these prophetic years? Well, prophetic years are actually only about 360 days in a year. Okay, so the years that we have now, 365 is about five days longer every year. Okay, and the reason why is because the calendar that's being used today, which the calendar being used today has been changed a number of times. Okay, just to give you a little information on that, when you go to in the beginning of the Roman Empire, they used a calendar that had 8-day weeks, not 7-day weeks, 8-day weeks. Okay, you go back to ancient Egypt, they used a calendar for a while that had 3 weeks. Each of the weeks was 10 days long. So 3 weeks, 10 days long each. See, so calendars have all been changed and messed up, and all kinds of things been done. Like it says in the book of Daniel, he shall think to change times and seasons, times and laws, right? So the calendar that we're using today is not the calendar we've already used. We've always used, I meant to say. The calendar that we're using today is not the calendar that's always been in use. There's been a number of calendars that have been used. So the point is that we say it's 2024, but you don't know. We don't know what year it is. Okay, we don't know what year it is. I think it's actually closer to, when you actually look at it. Forget it. I don't want to try to get end of a long day. I'm trying to figure this out on my head, right? If I'm gonna figure that out, I'll write it down on paper, right? So, but the point is that we say it's 2024 when we look at this calendar, but it's not 2024. It's not. Okay, it's like in the Matrix when Morpheus was talking to Neo and he said, well, you think it's the year 1999 where it's actually more like 2399 or whatever year he said, right? Well, there's a lot of truth. That actually applies. It's not that big of a gap, right? It's not that big of a gap. It may be like a 15, 20 year gap or something like that, okay? It's not hundreds of years off, but the point is that the calendar, the date on the calendar is not accurate. Okay. And so when it comes to these prophetic years, the prophetic years are actually the real years. Okay. Because the prophetic years are based off of the lunar calendar, where the calendar that we use now is based off of the solar. It's a solar calendar based off of the year. I meant to say based off of the sun. Okay, but the calendar is supposed to be based off of the moon. The moon governs the months. Tells you that in the Apocrypha, right? That's why, we'll be celebrating the new year. We'll celebrate the new year over here in the West. And then like a month or 2 or 3 later, you'll see on the news where it's telling you that over in Asia, they're celebrating the Lunar New Year. All right. And they actually have it right because the Lunar New Year is the real New Year. Right. And so when you have a lunar calendar, your months are based off of the moon, which is the correct way to do it. And the months are always the exact same length, as opposed to this solar calendar where sometimes a month's 31 days, sometimes it's 30 days, sometimes it's 28 days, sometimes it's 29 days, and it's all over the place, right? Okay, and so you come out with 365 years, and then every 4 years you got to have a leap year. What type of confusion and madness is this, right? No, you go off of the lunar calendar. Every month is the exact same length, which is about 30 days, and you come up with a year that's about 360 days. 360 days a year, approximately. So that makes each year 5 days shorter. And so when you play that out over 483 years, that's your additional 7 years that you're missing. So the prophetic years are actually the correct years. See, and so when you look at it they call them prophetic years, but they're actually the correct years. And when you measure it according to the lunar calendar, it's 483 years. Because if you're going off of the solar calendar, you're going to do the math and it's going to come up like 477 or something like that. And you're going to be like, wait a minute, I thought it's supposed to be 483. Well, it is 483 if you use the lunar calendar. Okay, just to understand that, right? Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, until the Messiah, the Prince, Yahushua HaMashiach, the only begotten Son, shall be 7 weeks. That's when everything was getting rebuilt, and 62 weeks. Okay, going all the way up to the death, burial, and resurrection of Yahushua in 32/33 AD. Okay. The streets shall be built again. See, everything, not just the temple, the street, the city itself, the wall, and the temple, even in troublous times, because we were being harassed by the heathen round about. Since we didn't let them participate, because they can't participate. They have nothing to do with us and our power and our covenant and our blessing. They got nothing to do with any of that, although they want to, right? But because they couldn't participate, they decided to try to trouble us and give us a hard time. And they did, make things more difficult for us, but they didn't stop it. See, that's why it says even in troublous times. And after 62 weeks, okay, shall Messiah be cut off, which means after the 7 weeks, and then also after the 62 weeks, which means after 483 years. Okay, again, according to the lunar calendar, which sometimes was referred to as the prophetic years, right? Which really, again, the prophetic years are the correct, real, accurate years. Okay, really, they should just call those years and call the other years solar years or whatever they want to call it. Okay, because the prophetic years are the correct years, right? So after that 483 years, after 62 weeks, shall Messiah Yahushua be cut off. Means that's when he was crucified, right? Yahushua HaMashiach was crucified, 33 AD, right? But not for himself and the people of the prince. Okay, in other words, we know from Hebrews, the 7th chapter, that he offered up a sacrifice first for his own sins, not for his sins in that life, but for his sins as Adam, Isaac, and Solomon. Okay, and Solomon, he went off very hard. Adam, he was responsible for the fall, right? But it was all according to the plan of the Heavenly Father, right? So he offered up first a sacrifice first for his own sins. As Yahushua, he was perfect, right? So he offered up a sacrifice first for his own sins and then for the people, right? Okay, so that's what it's talking about, but not for himself. And the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Okay, I believe his name was Titus, the Edomite named Titus, right? and the end thereof shall be with a flood. Yeah, a flood of troops. Okay, a flood of destruction. And until the end of the war, desolations are determined. That's what Yahushua Mashiach is referring to here when he says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. That's wrong way. This is the passage he's talking about. He's talking about this right here. Okay. All right. Let's read the 26 again, and 27 is it. And we're probably going to wrap there tonight. Okay. And after 62 weeks, meaning the whole entire 483 years, shall Messiah be cut off. Right, 32 AD, 33 AD, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city, Titus, I believe it was his name, the Edomite's name, and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. This is exactly what Yahushua was talking about. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Pagan Christians take this to mean, they twist this to support a false pagan Christian doctrine of a 7-year tribulation. Okay, now it is a 7 years here. They got that part right? You got to have something correct to hang your lie on. So that's the part that's correct, that they're going to hang their lie and their deception on, right? Okay, but this is all history now. It was prophecy when it was written by Daniel, but it's prophecy fulfilled. It was prophecy when, the last week anyway, okay, was prophecy when Yahushua spoke it, right? But it's now all prophecy fulfilled. This is all in the history books now. Okay? That's why they have the Arch of Titus. I think I have that up. Let me see here. Oop, wrong thing. Oh shoot, there it is. Where is this here? Oh man, my controls for the video recording is right on what I want to click. Let me see if it'll still work. Goodness gracious. No. Oh, man. That's one problem there. Okay, let's do it this way. Now, where's it? There it is. Now I got to get it to flip again. Let's see here. There we go. Yeah, Arch of Titus. If it'll... Let me see here. Why is it? Okay, here we go. But yeah, because they celebrated taking us down. It says, we say 70 AD because that's when the siege began, right? But this is actually talking about the period of time of 66 AD to 73 AD. And that right there should clue you in that that's the final 7-year period, the final week. Okay, once Yahushua HaMashiach was crucified on the cross, his death, burial, and resurrection, the time clock paused. There was a pause. Okay, so you had the 483 years from the time the decree went out, 49 years, everything was rebuilt. Then you had the remaining portion of the 483 years going all the way up to the death, burial, and resurrection of Yahushua HaMashiach, and then the time clock paused, and it resumed again in 66 AD. And it completed the final week in 73 AD. So the final week is done. All 70 weeks are done. Okay? And in the middle of that, 70 AD, that's when the siege occurred, which is going to tie into verse 27, which we're going to get in a second. I just want to show you, because this is the Arch of Titus, which they built to celebrate taking us down. Right? And yeah, I just want to show you some of the artwork they had. You see that right there? Yeah, this is, I forget exactly where it's located. Let me see. I'll find out here in a second. But it's over there in Western Asia, right? Known today as Europe. Okay, I forget which one of those, whether it's France or whatnot. But you can see the menorah there. And some other instruments and stuff that they were bringing out of the temple. They sacked the temple and destroyed it. Okay, and they celebrated with this. And they took the they took the because we had a lot of gold and silver and just a lot of wealth in the temple, and they took that and used that to fund the building of their Colosseum, right? So now where is this, man? I'm just curious because just want to know where it's actually located. But this is how they celebrate it, and it was erected also to honor Titus for his great victory against us. All right. Should tell you here. It was constructed in 81 AD by Emperor Domitian shortly after the death of his older brother Titus to commemorate Titus's official deification or consecration. It goes on to say, and his victory against the Jewish revolt. It goes on to say that. I know because I checked it out a little earlier. I just want to see where it's located. Rome, Italy. Italy. There you go. Italy. All right. All right, so back to 27, we're going to wrap this up. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, because there was an agreement that the leadership of our people had with the Roman Empire. And it says here, he shall confirm. And that agreement goes back all the way to before the time of Yahushua, when Yahushua and Mashiach showed up on the scene, right? That agreement had already been set. To confirm, give strength. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, the word confirm, tells you everything you need to know, right? So there was a confirmation like, okay, look, everything's still good, right? We get to still do what we do. We're still a vassal state. Everything's cool, right? And there was a confirmation. Yeah, everything's cool. Keep doing you. Just, just abide by the rules, abide by the covenant, and abide by the agreement, and all's good. But in the middle of that, the Romans broke it, and they seized Jerusalem in 70 AD. This is what it's talking about. This period of time started 66 AD, 70 AD, and right in the middle of it, they seized Jerusalem, broke the covenant, the agreement, right? And 73 AD, it was over, and that was the final week, 66 AD. To 73 AD, that's the 70th week, the 70th period of 7 years, and Daniel's 70 weeks were complete in 73 AD. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, one period of 7 years. And in the midst of the week, 70 AD, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, because he sacked Jerusalem. He seized Jerusalem, I should say, right? So nothing could come in, nothing could go out. Okay. And so, well, if you ain't getting anything in, you ain't getting anything out. Well, now you don't have the materials you need anymore. Whatever animals are in there is all you got. There's no food coming in. So now we got to start eating all the animals, including the ones we usually had to breed to keep the population up. Now we're out of animals. So how are we going to do sacrifices without animals? And man, we're not even sure how we're going to have the basic necessities of life. How are we going to do anything, right? So that's how he caused the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, because Jerusalem was under siege. Nothing and no one was going in or out. And if you study the history, we had a great wall, and they couldn't really, just come and they couldn't get over the wall or just bring the wall down. We had a great, strong, high and mighty wall, right? But what they did is they built a second wall out around our wall, because what we would do is some of our people would go out at night under cover of darkness and get food and various other things we need from the area, surrounding area, the wilderness. I say wilderness, but I mean the forested area. You can get herbs and things and animals and whatnot that you need from the area. Maybe even make a trek somewhere else and do a deal, cut a deal, and you could just come out and come and go, with some care under cover of night, under cover of darkness. But he put it into all that because he built a wall around our wall and set up guard stations at various points. And now nobody could we couldn't just come and go anymore. Now it's like whatever we have in this city, that's what we got. Whatever we don't have, we ain't getting it. Whoever's here, that's all that's here. Whoever's not here, they ain't getting in, and nobody else is coming in. So they sieged the city because they couldn't just come in and fight us, because we had those great high strong walls. And we had some good warriors too. So what did they choose to do? They just built a wall around our wall, and they sieged the city. And we just decayed from the inside out. And from what I understand, they also built a tunnel underground and eventually came up that way and got into the city. And of course, food was extremely limited. The men that were still there to fight were weakened and all that. There was a lot of a siege, man. Look, it was a famine. Okay. All right. People, women, there's accounts in Josephus, goodness gracious, Josephus of women eating their children, man. Okay. So that siege was very, very effective. And ultimately, Jerusalem fell in 73 AD. Okay, that's what this is talking about. Okay, in the midst of the week, 70 AD, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even unto the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. So those that hearken unto the words of Yahushua and fled into the mountains and then down into the interiors of Africa, they were refugees, or I should say we were refugees in Africa. Okay, separate and distinct from the true Africans, okay, which are actually Hamites, not Africans. That's just what they're called today. Okay, and so part of the deception, part of the slander, okay, is pushing that lie that we were Africans, right? But like I said, when you watch this all the way through towards the end, like the last 5, 6, 7 minutes, they bring out that we're the true Israelites. I was actually surprised. All right. I was actually surprised. Like, wow. They even show a clip. They even show a clip of some dudes wearing IUIC t-shirts. I should say brothers. Some brothers wearing IUIC t-shirts, bringing out some of this information. IUIC t-shirts with fringes on them, bringing out some of this information. I was actually surprised. Okay, because they actually brought out that we're the true Israelites. All right, and so I don't know why they're going to call us Africans then. Maybe they think that all the Africans are the same people as us, but they don't understand that the true Africans are actually descendants of Ham. We're descendants of Shem. All right, but that's what I wanted to focus on for this lesson, is clearing up that we're not Africans at all, man. That's part of the deception. That's part of the deception that the Edomites pushed along with the iconoclasm when they came out of the Caucasus Mountains, going back to Revelation 20. And when the 1,000 years, known as the Dark Ages, the Byzantine Empire, the Medieval Ages, the Middle Ages, okay, about 300 AD to 450 AD is when it started, going to about 1300 AD to about 1450 AD is when it was stopping, and the bulk of them was coming down out of the Caucasus Mountains, and that kicked off the Renaissance. That's what this is talking about. When the 1,000 years are expired, that Renaissance period, right? The rebirth. Renaissance, by the way, means rebirth. Rebirth of Edomite rulership. Rebirth of the rulership of the Edomites, because they were first ruling as the Greeks, and then they ruled as the Romans, and then they went down for 1,000 years. We read about that in verses 1, 2, and 3. Shut them up, set a seal upon them, they should deceive the nations no more. Okay, and then when they came down, that kicked off the Renaissance, which means rebirth of Edomite rulership. Okay, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth. Gog and Magog, but that deception, right? And that's Christianity, that's woman worship, that's the alphabet lifestyle, that's the iconoclasm, which we're going to get more into with the next lesson. All of that, including pushing that we're Africans, so-called blacks, we're so-called Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, Seminole Indians. All that is part of the deception, and so very, very, very much more, because that's all this man is about. Everything he says when he opens his mouth is a lie. And if he's telling the truth, it's only because the Most High is making him tell the truth so that he can fulfill the 64th Psalm in the 8th verse. And I'm going to close. Other than that, he don't tell the truth. So they shall make their own tongue. And this guy here who's narrating this, he sounds like an Edomite. And if that's the case, then then that's an example. That video is an example of this. I'm sure some Edomites are involved with it, even if he happens to be an Israelite or one of the other nations. Some Edomites are involved in it. So they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves, meaning they're going to tell the truth on their own selves. They're going to tell on themselves. All that see them shall flee away, meaning all that see this man, the Edomites, the devil, the Satan, okay, the adversary here on earth, right? Okay, because every time you see Satan, it's not talking about the spiritual demon Satan. A lot of the times it is, but sometimes it's talking about his physical counterpart here on earth. All that see them shall flee away, meaning all that see him for who he truly is and see him, and understand what he's truly all about. They want nothing to do with him. They want to get the hell away from him. All that see them shall flee away. So that was the focus of tonight's lesson, is just going into how we were fleeing Roman persecution during that final week of Daniel's 70 weeks, 66 AD to 73 AD, with Jerusalem being seized in 70 AD and then ultimately sacked, right? And so we were refugees, those that hearken unto Yahushua. We were refugees in the land of Africa, the land of Ham, right? But we're not them, right? We were refugees, and we ruled during the Middle Ages, the Dark Ages, man. That's why it's called dark. The Byzantine Empire, which means backwards, because from their perspective, it was backwards. Okay, from their perspective, it's right side up for them to be on top and us to be on the bottom. But so that's why they call it the Byzantine Empire. All right, but that's it. So we're gonna have another part. I think maybe just another part. What else we got to get into? The Job 9:24, the Acts 13, Acts 21, Revelation 12. We'll see. Probably another part, possibly two, all subject to the Spirit. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Before I do, want to give all glory and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shabbat, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and respect to the brothers teaching, pushing this truth out the four corners of the earth. Adawan, brother Zad, this lesson was edifying and encouraging to you, Akim, and any Akwaf that may be listening and or watching. Ayashmi Akwana, Azanyam Lashamai Shamai. Let him who has ears to hear. Kwam Yasharala, Babakusha, Abad, Babal, Aitha, will call Adawam. Shalom Lahabakarium, Shalom.